It's time for week 9 of Sabbath School Boot Camp. You are here in boot camp to learn how to think creatively and critically about your Sabbath School lesson. Well, this lesson is entitled Ministering Like Jesus, so eat later, study now. Today we're talking about developing a winning attitude. Now, Adventists don't usually talk about having winning attitudes, okay? We leave that to the motivational speakers and life coaches and such. But here we are. And what the lesson's author, Mark Finley, calls a winning attitude is not about having a positive self-image, although that's great, do that. But he defines it as looking at people as Jesus sees them. Sabbath's lesson reminds us that Jesus loved everybody. He never thought of himself as better than anyone else. Did you catch that? God, the all-knowing, all-powerful being who rules the universe, didn't consider himself to be better than you. He ate with people no respectable person would eat with in society. So this call to develop what Finley calls a winning attitude is a call to look at people like Jesus looks at them. We need to check our spiritual pride at the door. I mean, are we Adventists better than other Christians? Are we better than the atheists? Is that how we see ourselves? Well, the answer should be no. So check yourself before you wreck yourself, brother. Sliding over to Sunday, we are going to explore this idea of seeing people as Jesus sees them in the story of the woman at the well in John chapter 4. Now, you know the story. Jesus intentionally leads the disciples through Samaria on his way to Jerusalem. The disciples don't like it. They want to call down fire from heaven to destroy them because the Samaritans are heretics. And Jesus has a wonderful conversation with a Samaritan woman at a well. Now, Mark Finley's point in bringing up this story is very clear, that because the Samaritans had their own temple and quasi-Orthodox religion, that as Finley puts it, the disciples would readily skip Samaria as an unfertile ground for the proclamation of the gospel. I don't actually think that was the problem at all, however, with all due respect to Finley. The problem wasn't that the disciples didn't think the Samaritans were ready for Jesus. It was that the disciples just didn't like the Samaritans. They were prejudiced. It's not that they didn't think the Samaritans could be saved. It was that they didn't want them to be saved. They wanted to keep Jesus, the presence and blessings of God and salvation to themselves in the custody of their own people. But this is not a story just of the bad Israelites, the bad Jews, and the noble discriminated against Samaritans. It's not quite that simple, because the Samaritans had their own prejudices, right? So the woman at the well was basically trying to involve Jesus in that controversy. The Jews were prejudiced against the Samaritans and the Samaritans against the Jews. So where should we worship, she asks him. And Jesus just sidesteps the questions. Like, I don't want to be a part of either party's prejudice against the other. Jesus is not on your side or my side. He's on his side. And he's wanting you and me to join his side and to stop looking at the world this way. Jesus only sees people who need help. And this challenges us to re-examine our own prejudices. I mean, what group of people do you not like? What group of people do you see walking around and you say, Psh, I wish they would stop doing this? Like you want to go to the other side of the street. Look, I get it. We all think of ourselves as open-minded, good, unprejudiced people. But there are always types of people out there that just bother us, that we want to avoid, that we would have a hard time being around, that we might not even think of offering a Bible study to because we've just determined in our mind that person wouldn't want it. It's not for them. Now, think about how we do evangelism. What types of people do we reach? Who are our evangelistic series is designed for? What types of people are we not reaching in evangelism, and why? The truth is, we naturally reach people that look and think like us. They share our values. We have naturally crafted our message for people like us. And if you want to discuss this further in your class, then name some of the neighborhoods or suburbs or whatever in your city and ask your members to raise their hands when you mention the neighborhoods they live in. What neighborhoods are not represented in your class and why? Or you can talk to your class about baptisms over the past 10 years. What income class or what racial demographic do the people who were baptized in your church in the last 10 years come from? Who are we overlooking in our city? It may not be intentional. It's probably just habitual. We think we have good reasons for not going into this neighborhood or that neighborhood. It's not safe. Those aren't really our people, or there's another church over there. That's for them. The disciples had good reasons not to go into Samaria too, okay? If you asked them, they'd give you plenty of good reasons. And yet, Jesus went. Now, moving to Monday, we will face another group that the Jews were prejudiced against, the Canaanites. This history went way back, didn't it? God told the Israelites to wipe the Canaanites out, and yet here's a Canaanite, and here is Jesus praising a Canaanite woman's faith. In the other story we find on Monday, we meet the woman who anoints Jesus' feet before she dies. Now, the common thread in these stories is that Jesus loves people who have faith. It doesn't matter who you are, from a Roman centurion to a recovering prostitute to a Canaanite to a Samaritan, does not matter. If you trust God, then Jesus will defend you from everything. He will hunt you down. He will seek you out. He will love you. He will eat with you. He will be seen with you. And that's how Jesus sees the world. There are people with faith and people who need to be encouraged to have faith. And this is an attitude we need to develop, to look past everything else and only see a person for whether they love God or not. Look, I've met Baptists and non-denominational Christians with great faith. I'm sure you have too. And we need an Adventist framework, a way of looking at the world that allows for that accepts that is okay learning from people who have faith, even if they don't go to my church. Because what matters in the end is faith. Now, it should be a theologically informed faith, okay? But at the end of the day, it's the faith that matters. And it's no accident that we have looked at 3 stories of Jesus praising women. Women are generally the good guys, so to speak, in the Gospels. In part because, like the Samaritans, as a whole, there was prejudice towards the idea of empowering women, of entrusting women with the good news of God. Trotting over to Tuesday, we find Paul reminding us to speak the truth in love. Now, how does Finley define this? He writes, "The bonds of friendship are built when we agree with people as much as possible, demonstrate acceptance, and compliment them where it is appropriate." How important that we make a habit of looking for the good in people as opposed to the bad. Hey, here's a prophetic word to a lot of Adventists out there, okay? This is for you. Sometimes we dwell almost exclusively on the bad in others, okay? Opening night of our evangelistic series is often involving a recital of the problems that the world faces. And to the extent that we know anything about other Christians, it's usually we know about the errors they believe. And when's the last time you've heard a conversation in an Adventist church, in Sabbath School, about the good things Roman Catholics have done? Finley is trying to get us out of this spiral of negativity without losing our truth, okay? We're not giving that up. But here's a game you can play in your class. Every time someone mentions something bad about the Pope, or how the Baptist belief in the rapture is unbiblical, you ask them to say something nice about that person or that faith community, okay? The rapture isn't true. I think we would all agree on that here in class. Now, what do you think the Baptists got right? Say something good about them. Say something encouraging about them. Say something that you admire about them. As Adventists, we often let little disparaging remarks slide because, we don't believe in the rapture, so we think this left behind thing has sent a lot of people off course. But imagine if a visitor is in your class and they hear a member laugh at the rapture, and another member laughs at the idea of infant baptism, and another member laughs at something the Catholics or the Lutherans or somebody is doing wrong. What I'm getting at here is that I don't think we often realize how negative we routinely come across to other people. It's so deeply ingrained in us to critique other people's beliefs that we barely even notice it anymore. We spend our time reading Adventist books that reassure us why we are correct about the Bible and why these other churches are wrong. We don't actually have a lot of Adventist books out there that affirm what those churches got right and what some of them may even do better than we Adventists. Mark Finley, of course, is a huge exception because his career has generally been very positive and uplifting towards members of other Christian communities. For instance, just grab his book Studying Together, get it off your church's bookshelf, and see for yourself. He makes a point to praise each church that he talks about in that book. But if you're like me, when I was a teenager, I skipped past the stuff we have in common with these different faith communities, and I went straight to the critiques. And I'd argue that this approach has generally made Adventist congregations casually cynical towards other Christians. And I think we should work on that. Well, that's all the time we got for this week, so class is dismissed. We'll see you next week.